Studio Live. I am your host, Elwood, and welcome to episode 5 from Rock On Studio. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me, and of course, I hope you're staying safe, staying healthy, and staying sane through all the chaos. If you haven't checked it out yet, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page. All you got to do is go on YouTube and search Rock On Studio Live to find it. Past interviews with Brent Smith of Shinedown, had Lou Brutus, my boy Joe Cotella from Dead, even Scott Stapp joined me for a conversation. And tune in tomorrow at 1 p.m. I'll be live with Sean from Gray Days. And coming up next week, Dustin from Starset is lined up, Eric from I Prevail, also working around, Chris Motionless from Motionless and White. So we got a lot of cool guests that'll be up over the next couple weeks to keep you busy during all the chaos. But for today's show, I have a very special guest. Not only do I love his band and everything that he does, but he's perfect for this because we're kind of living in a horror movie right now when you think about it, right? So he has taken everything that I love from horror and metal and put it together to make a masterpiece. His theatrical live shows leave people shocked and in awe and can't wait to get back for even more. And I feel like every time I see them, the shows continue to get elevated every single time. So Rock On Studio is here to not only keep you up to date with all of your favorite bands, but give you one-on-one conversations with them you can't get anywhere else. Remember, if you do have a comment or a question, please drop them right in the comment section, and we'll do our best to try to get to all of them. And thank you guys for hanging out. Once again, subscribe on YouTube, Rock On Studio Live. Now, without further ado, let's bring in the horror. Joining me in the Rock On Studio Live, my good friend Spencer, frontman of Ice Nine Kills. Spencer, how you doing today, man? And how are you feeling during the quarantine?
I'm doing well, man. With that intro, I feel like I should have come on with like a mask or some blood coming on my face. I look too normal, right? I've been doing well, man. It's taken a little bit of time, obviously, to adjust and adapt to basically just life at home. But I've recently, in the last couple of weeks, really fallen into routine where I get up, I work on a ton of new music. I plan new exciting merch drops for the band, and I've actually gotten more accomplished in the last couple of weeks I think I have in like a year. So trying to look at things in a positive light.
That's really what I've been trying to do too. I feel like without a routine, we're screwed. If you wake up and don't have a game plan for each day, nothing is going to get accomplished and you're going to end up back in that same hole you were for the last couple of days. But I do leave that for Sundays. I need one day to be an absolute piece of crap, and that's my day. Sunday's my day. So obviously, congratulations on the Silver Scream Final Cut, an album that came out, it caught on. How long did you tour on that record? I feel like you were on the road for a long time with the Silver Scream.
I feel that too. I think the album came out and we just hit the road. Multiple tours. We went out with Atreyu on one tour, which was really cool. We did a bunch of headlining shows right around the album's release. We went out with Falling Reverse. We went out on another mini headliner in the summer, last summer. We went to Europe. Headlining for basically the first time in Europe, came back, did a full headlining tour throughout the U.S. And literally when that tour ended in New York City, we hopped on a plane the next day to Australia when we had never been there before, and we played some great intimate club shows, and then we did some big festival shows for this Good Things Festival over there. We came back from Australia, we're home a little bit for the holidays, then we hopped on Shiprocked on a boat, and it seemed like we had maybe a week off, and then we hopped on a plane back to Europe out with Papa Roach and Hollywood Undead, and it was amazing. Unfortunately, it did have to end about a week early, and because the whole pandemic thing was really exploding while we were over there, which was kind of nuts. We had to race to the airport, and we seemed to like just miss that huge rush that everyone saw on the news with thousands of people lined up through security. We missed that whole rush, thankfully. And unfortunately, we are supposed to be out with Five Finger and Papa Roach right now, but that has been moved to the fall. So, yeah, a lot of touring.
It's awesome, man. And that's terrifying at the same time. When this all went down, I was actually in Mexico. I was down there sitting poolside, and I saw when the NBA canceled their season, I thought, okay, maybe this is getting a little serious. And then to come back and know that we wouldn't be at a show for I don't know how long. I've seen a big thing going around on social media this week saying, you're stuck in quarantine with the last band you saw. And I thought that was a really cool way of looking at things. It was like, oh man, and Facebook memories are just becoming torture now. It's like, I don't want to relive any of those memories. I want to make new ones. So can we hold out on that? So while we're in quarantine, you have always been a huge horror fan. Have you, or I should ask, have you always been a horror fan? Is it something that started when you were young, or you kind of grew into it? What drew you to it?
To be honest, I don't remember a time before I was a horror fan. I got into it very young. I think probably a few years before most people. I was probably, I want to say 7 or 8 years old in that time, maybe even earlier. And it really started from going to VHS, video cassette stores like Blockbuster and other mom and pop stores in my area where I grew up. Oftentimes, I remember in particular, there was one that was inside of a grocery store in Swampscott, Massachusetts. And when my mom would go grocery shopping, I would kill time by hanging out in the video store. And I was always drawn to the horror aisle for whatever reason. I think it had a lot to do with the cover art for those VHS tapes and seeing all the Friday the 13th and Halloween and think, what is this? I want to know all about this. And with some convincing, my parents let me watch them. And it grew into a lifelong obsession. And I've never looked back.
And it's so great because you take your love of music and metal and that horror and put it together, and you bring us when I heard the Silver Scream, it was a whole nother level of music for me, and could not wait to get it on the radio. And you literally could have made any one of those songs singles. But at the same time, how much fun was it recording that record, getting your favorite movies, using movie clips, bringing in your friends to record? I mean, was it a process that you thoroughly enjoyed every minute, or did it still drive you crazy?
It was honestly the most fun I've ever had writing any kind of music. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It was not personal experiences, wasn't like, addiction or problems with relationships or, important events in my life that I had to relive or nothing like that. I mean, I think those songs you write about, those subjects, it can be cathartic, but at the same time, sometimes you're going through past memories that you'd rather forget. That's why you're sort of putting them in the song to put them to bed and get through the experience. It was just writing about stuff that I love, that was fun. Movies that I've seen so many times and sort of ingrained in my soul. So being able and having the honor to kind of put my own spin on these classic stories was so rewarding and so much fun. And that's what it's really about. We're not taking ourselves too seriously with this stuff. It's horror. It's always been about an escape from reality. That's what it always was for me. And that's what the Silver Scream was supposed to be. And I'm so glad that it turned out to be that escape for other people. And that's what it's about at the end of the day.
All right, we got some great questions from people, so thank you guys for joining in on the conversation. If you guys do want to hear have a question for Spencer, then please drop it in the comment section. We'll do our best to try to get to all of them. Now, I've got to see you guys probably 10 times over the couple of years that we've seen the tour, and every time, as I said, it would get elevated. Wardrobe changes, more production. The scenes would get larger and larger. From Sarah, what is your favorite song to actually perform, and why?
Wow, it is very difficult when I get asked this question because I really like performing them all pretty much. But to me, as far as the last year and a half since the album's come out, there's something special when we do It Is the End, which is based on, of course, Stephen King's novel and then later Stanley Kubrick's film. It's just a really theatrical performance, really theatrical song. It seems to get the most wildest reaction. We play it at the end, so it really seems like an event. And I would have to say It Is the End. And so, maybe that might change. But
so it's funny. My wife is reading it right now. Have you actually ever read it?
Oh, man, it's a great book. It's right there on my shelf, and it is such a large book.
I bought it for her for Christmas because she wanted it, and I swear I looked at it. I was like, "There's no way you're going to read this. 1,200 pages, little print." But she's actually finishing it up, and she said the details in that book are insane when it comes to after watching a movie. We know the book will always be better. All right, shout out for Dan. What are your thoughts on remakes as a horror fan? The Nightmare on Elm Street and Halloween remakes. Are you fans, or do you think these movies should just be left alone the way they are?
For me, it goes on a case-by-case basis. As a horror fan, as someone always desperate for more material, especially from my favorite characters like, Michael and Freddy and Jason, I'm always going to be the guy that's at the movie's day of release supporting whatever it is. I really loved Rob Zombie's first Halloween remake. I know it was a bit of a divisive film. Some people hated it. Some people loved it. I really thought it was great. And I thought it was awesome that he put his own spin on that film. He really put the Rob Zombie treatment on that one. His second one, I was a little bit off for me at first, but it has since grown on me, and I do respect him really taking a creative leap and just really doing his own thing on the second one. I really liked the Friday the 13th remake back in 2009. I thought Derek Mears was a great Jason. I did wish that the kills were a little bit more brutal. I wanted more gore from that one, but it was still great. And really did not care for the Nightmare on Elm Street one. Was very disappointed in that one. And I think a lot of it has to do with you can't do Freddy Krueger without Robert Englund. It's just like you can't do it. And I thought, Earl Haley, who portrayed him, he did a fine job, but that one just, I think, was a mess, unfortunately. But I think my favorite one as far as the 80s remakes has got to be My Bloody Valentine. That one was just so cool. It was in 3D, and it was one of the only 3D movies I ever saw that I was like, wow, this really warrants 3D. It's not just a marketing ploy. It's not just to get that extra money tacked onto the ticket. The kills were amazingly inventive, extremely gory, and I just thought the whole vibe of it was retro and intentionally campy, and it wasn't trying to be convoluted, or it wasn't trying to be like, this is going to be the Citizen Kane of slashers. This is a slasher movie. It's sleazy. It's filled with nudity and gore, and the acting was hammy, and I think they just really nailed it. And was disappointed we didn't get a sequel.
I feel like that's everything a horror movie needs. You got to have all those staples if you want to redo stuff. You got to have the gore. You got to have the nudity. And it's hard, I think. I think it's hard to draw a line because these guys want their movies in the theaters. So there has to be a line where you're like, okay, this is as far as we're going to go. Or how many times they turn it in for a rating and come back and say, okay, this scene's got to go. This scene's got to go. This scene's got to go. And I know they deal with that,
Absolutely. And today when everyone is, overly PC in my opinion, and people say that slasher movies are misogynistic and stuff, it limits kind of what new directors can do. But I've always thought that whole idea was BS, because if you look at the cornerstones of the slasher genre, who is it that always defeats the villain? It's a strong woman.
It's always a woman.
It's always a woman. So I find those films to be empowering for women. And yes, women die in violent ways in those films, but so do the guys. So it's like, those killers are equal opportunists here.
All right. So speaking of all of the movies, and I know you've been asked this question 9,999 times, so I'm going to ask you for a 10,000th time. While everyone's here on quarantine, Spencer, what are the top 5 quarantine horror movies you should be watching while at home?
Wow. I've done a few lists with many of these. So what I try to do now when anyone asks me, I try to give ones that I haven't given before. So let me dig deep here. A couple of movies that I think I always think about as a pair, because they're very similar stories, but they're both involving the dark side of life. I don't know if they're necessarily horror films, but they have a horror element to them. And the first one is Dead Man on Campus, which is a horror comedy from the late 90s, starring the guy who played Zach Morris from Saved by the Bell.
Mark Paul Gosselaar?
Yeah.
Wow, I don't even think I've heard that one.
So this is this was one of the very few films that MTV Studios released as a movie, and it's like a really funny, almost like, now I wouldn't say like Naked Gun style comedy. Like, it's not that ridiculous. I love Naked Gun, but it's really on the pulse of what was going on in the '90s. The soundtrack is so late '90s. You got Marilyn Manson. You've got even like Goldfinger on the soundtrack, and it's a really interesting story about these two guys who are failing school, basically, long story short, and they find out that the only way that they're going to survive is that if they exploit this loophole they found in the college, that if your roommate dies of suicide, that you get straight A's. So they try to get some guy to move in that's already going to die so that they can get straight A's. And then, so that's great. That's Dead Man on Canvas. And then the other one that basically has the same exact premise, except it's not really, it's funny, but it's not like a laugh out loud. It's supposed to be like a Naked Gun, so to speak, called The Curve. And that has Matthew Lillard from Scream in it, and the chick who played Felicity from that popular TV show. And it's really cool. It's a great thriller. It's got great twists. So those two right there. I'll mention Idle Hands, which is also from that era, starring Devon Sawa and Seth Green, and I think the first film appearance by Jessica Alba. And it's just a really funny horror comedy with a lot of gore, borrows a lot of pages from Evil Dead, about this kid who is a slacker stoner, and there's a series of killings in the town, and he realizes he's doing the killings because his hand is possessed by the devil.
Yeah, I think I've seen that one before. It's awesome.
So that's a great one, the underrated. Let me think. What else is another great one? I'm trying to dive deep for ones that I don't recommend usually. I would say Evil Dead. That's just a really cool film series. And I would recommend Army of Darkness, which is like the third part of that series.
All of them.
Yeah.
What's your take on, this is one of my favorites, and I don't know if you want to say it's completely horror, but the book is obviously a lot more devastating than the movie will say. But what's your take on American Psycho?
Oh, I mean, that's one of my favorite. I have that book. I have 2 copies of that book in case I wanted to read it more than once. But I really do have one by my nightstand. That's one of my favorite horror films ever. And I've read the book many times. And the film actually this year is celebrating its 20th year anniversary. And absolutely brilliant film, and another film where you wouldn't necessarily think a woman would have directed this, but not only did a woman direct it, a woman wrote this. She adapted the screenplay, of course, from Bret Easton Ellis's novel, and she did an amazing job. And that was the first time I ever saw Christian Bale in anything, and I think that's still like one of his best performances.
Yeah, and it's so cool because Christian Bale is known for diving into his roles and becoming the character. Like, people say he goes psycho over it. So I was like, how did he prepare for American Psycho to get into that role? It's like, he's absolutely nuts. But you've read the book. The book is so much more detailed than what they could have done in a movie. There's no way they could have put that on a big screen.
No. The detail they go in, the meticulous details about people's clothing. Sometimes it takes up pages and pages of every item that the person is wearing. And it's just a brilliant satire on 80s excess and the materialism of that era. Just the whole idea that everyone is so focused on who has the better car and, who has the better dinner reservations, that someone doesn't realize that their good friend is a psychopath killing everyone.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. You're huge in merch, and you have done some amazing things. Ice Nine Kills was supposed to be playing a show in Orlando, and a company said, you're not getting away with that. You had a merch grab for that. And now, under quarantine, you just released a brand new limited edition Father of Death bandanas available now, right? To protect everybody during the quarantine. Somebody asked, what is your favorite merch that you've actually put together from the band? Do you have something that stands out?
Wow, that's a tough question too, because we put out so many things that I love.
I have the collector series, which I'm pumped up from the Florida situation. I got my hands on all of them, which were good. But I knew you'd have something for the quarantine.
You know what's funny about you mentioned the bandana that we just dropped today. That's a complete coincidence because we had planned to have that as our VIP item on the Five Finger Death Punch tour. We thought it would be cool to have this mask, bandana, and we ordered tons of them back in January, February, before anyone even knew what Corona was. So we're sitting on all these bandanas and tons of other stuff that we were going to take on the tour. Like, this is perfect. People are looking for that kind of thing, and that was just sort of the stars aligning for that. And I'm glad. And my hope is that I still see some people out there not wearing masks and not wearing bandanas. And every time I see them, I'm like, what are you thinking? Mm-hmm. But it's also in relation to horror. This is the only time I've ever been alive where someone not wearing a mask is scarier, which is pretty funny. But my hope is that if there are Ice Nine Kills fans out there that aren't wearing masks or something, this will encourage them to do so.
Yeah, if you haven't checked it out yet, check it out. Ice Nine Kills, and you could also go to the merch.com website as well, where they have all of them. Just launched today, I believe, the Father of Death bandanas.
And if anyone wants any of our stuff right now, especially those bandanas, you go to ink-merch.com. And I think we only have like 400. So
those are going to go quick. Yeah, I noticed a lot with your merch. You make a majority of it almost limited edition. Like it's tough to get your hands on stuff. Is that something that you plan ahead?
Yeah, I always thought that would be a cool thing to do. And I've seen brands like Supreme do that kind of stuff. And it just makes everything feel more, everything feels more special because it's like not everyone can get this and it's not going to be around for too long. And I just remember being a fan of films or bands when they would release that stuff, and I'd be at a show and I'd see someone wearing something that I missed getting. I'm like, damn, I wish I had bought that. So it just sort of adds to the whole collector's culture that I've always been interested in.
Yeah, I feel like over the last couple of years, a lot of bands have been doing that now, not on the horror side, but Pearl Jam has posters dedicated for each show. When Guns N' Roses did their return, they had one. I feel like posters was a big thing. And I read a really interesting article the other day, and it said, are bands' face masks going to be the new T-shirts? Like, are they, because you noticed a lot of bands are jumping on the face mask. So now when you go to shows, is it going to be, our face masks going to be in the front rather than T-shirts?
Well, I certainly hope not, because if that's the case, I think that this whole pandemic will be much farther reaching and longer lasting than I hope. But it unfortunately might be the reality.
It's terrifying. And I get asked this question all the time from doing the show. When will concerts get back? When will I go to a concert? And to be honest, for everybody that's listening, is nobody knows right now. We are all doing our part, listening to the doctors and the scientists that are giving the advice that we believe. But just know, when we do get back to normal life, concerts will get announced, and also lots of new music is going to be released. I have a funny feeling that bands have been working hard. So I got to ask you this. What is next for Ice Nine Kills when it comes to the music front?
I've been slaving away over here. Got my little studio set up right in front of me, and I've just been hammering it away and trying to come up with the best music that I possibly can. And I'm very excited about the ideas that I have so far. And I think that the silver lining to this whole thing is that hopefully we'll be getting out new music sooner than intended, because we sort of reversed the schedules. You know, we were going to do a lot of touring for the next few months and then kind of spend the summer writing. But now it's just writing. So I'm excited to have that extra time to polish things, to really give the Silver Scream the follow-up that it so much deserves. And I don't want to let anyone down, so we're going to make sure we get it just right.
So are we going to continue on and have another horror record, do you believe? Is that something in your mind?
Yeah, I get the question a lot, and in true horror fashion, I don't want to give away too many details, but you'll be sure to you'll be scared of it. I'll say that. It's going to be
Beautiful.
scary.
Great question I got from Switzerland. Thank you guys for joining us. They want to know the difference between crowds in America compared to Europe. Are the crowds different when performing your songs?
It's different crowds for different tours. But I will say that as the band has gotten bigger and as the following has grown globally, we've seen sort of I'm trying to figure out a way to put it, a very consistent energy from the crowd. Before, when we were sort of doing really well in America, but people didn't really know us in Europe, it would be, okay, the European crowds aren't going to be as crazy as the American crowds because they don't know the band as much. They're not as diehard. But as the band has progressed, especially with the release of the last two records, it seems to really be evening out. So now it's sort of a competition, who could one-up Europe or one-up America. But,
I've always said it. I had high hopes of going to Hellfest this year. I heard that's one festival that every person that loves metal should go to and download. And obviously, Summer Festival's not going to happen this year, which is heartbreaking for everybody all across the world, not only here in the US, because it's a great time to catch up with all your favorite bands and see them all in the same place. So if you haven't done it yet, I don't know how you haven't, the Silver Scream Final Cut. Oh, before we go, I wanted to ask you this. Obviously, with the Silver Scream, powerful imagery of music videos coming out with the songs that you put together. How much do you have? Are you the director of those? Or what is your process like in putting those together? And do you see yourself in the future maybe doing your own horror movie or television series?
Well, I would love to do that. That's something that's always interested in me. Growing up, idolizing people, to talk back about Rob Zombie, some guy that's has his finger on the pulse of metal and horror, and then took those worlds and started making his own horror film. So I think that's a goal for me. As far as our music videos, I'm very hands-on involved. I usually write the overarching story, and then I get together with a very talented director, Dan Horahan, and he's just a great writer and collaborator. And we kind of tag team it, so to speak.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it. With that mind, between the music, I know a TV series or a horror movie would be something that we would all really enjoy. And just don't make it safe for theaters. Just do whatever you want. Go straight gore. Go right to DVD, because that's the way everybody's going to want it. We wouldn't expect anything less from you, man.
That's why we have the rated IX. So it's rated IX is beyond X. So
I love it. Spencer, Ice Nine Kills, live in the Rock On studio. Thank you so much for being our special guest today. Remember, guys, to subscribe. Rock On Studio Live on YouTube. You could get us on all your major platforms, from Facebook Live to Twitch and Periscope and anywhere else you can click and find on the internet. But we appreciate it. Coming up tomorrow, Sean from Grey Days will be my guest at 1 p.m. And like I said, scheduled ahead, Chris from Motionless in White will also be joined by Eric from I Prevail. And on top of all that, Dustin from Starset. So we will continue to keep you one-on-one with all of your favorite bands during the quarantine. Spencer, any last word you want to tell everybody before we get out of this chaos of quarantine? Any advice for staying sane during it?
Thanks for having us, and to all the fans out there, thank you guys for continuing to support Ink and other musicians that you love. We really appreciate it, and it's because of you guys that we're able to get through these very difficult times. So just giving a big thank you.
All right, don't forget to grab your merch. Father of Death bandana is available now at a very, very limited. They could already be gone, so make sure to hit up the website. What was that website one more time, Spencer?
It is ink-merch.com.
There you go, ink-merch.com. Get them while you can. My name is Elwood. That's Spencer from Ice Nine Kills. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Rock On Studio Live. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.